right? Oh, that's Hope's joke, not mine. You have to give her the credit. All right. Well, without further ado, I'm your last storyteller this evening. And I'm going to tell you a story about, you can bring it up a little bit. So I grew up in Long Beach, Indiana, which is on the shores of Lake Michigan, and my dad is a steel maker and steel recycler by trade, but he was a woodworker by hobby, and I think by keeping the marriage together, he went to the garage a lot and he made things out of wood. So I think both of those things are relevant. So we had a small home, 1,700 square feet for 6 people, 4 kids, 2 parents, and a dog. And so one year my dad was like, I'm going to build the kids a treehouse. But Mike Finnerty was not going to build a treehouse in a tree. Mike Finnerty was going to build a shed where he could put tools and the lawnmower and other things that were cluttering up his woodworking area in the garage. And the garage was really just the woodworking area. I don't want you to ever think we parked a car in the garage, because we only had 1 car garage, and that was the woodworking area. So all the cars were outside. But my dad needed a little more space, and he was like, we could put the lawnmower back there. We could put the weed. Okay. So Dad builds a 2-story building in the backyard, and it's probably 12 by 15 or so. It's not particularly large. And the first floor is all wood, or is all lawnmowers and stuff like that. But the second floor was our tree house, because it was as tall as the trees. But essentially it's a tiny little house. My mom and dad painted it white. They gave it red trim, just like our house. It had a cute little porch. It had windows in it. And we would hang out there. My mom put an oriental rug on the floor, and we had a tiny little table. And my twin sister and I would climb up into this house, and we would hang out, and we would throw Barbies as far as we could. And then we just see how far they could go. And my brother would go up there and he would play He-Man, and it's because he could leave all his He-Mans everywhere, and Mom would never tell him to pick them up, and we would kick them to the sides. I went up there and I read a lot. Shocking, because I liked a quiet place to live, because I shared a room with my twin sister, so there was just no corner of the house that could be your own. And we went up there to kind of just get away from things, throw things out of the windows, yell things at people in the yard, because you could go up there and you could duck behind the windows and no one would know who was yelling. We had a lot of mileage out of this little tree house. But eventually, I grew up, and my parents moved away. My twin sister and I grew up, and my parents moved away our right after our senior year of high school, and we left Michigan City. And Maureen and I went to Purdue, and my parents went to Pennsylvania somewhat unexpectedly for a different job opportunity for my dad. And Maureen and I were a little bereft, because we'd chosen Purdue, not just because it was whatever, we lived in Indiana, we were going to go to Purdue or IU. We had one strategic eye on the fact that you could drive to Chicago easily to go to rock concerts. And we had another strategic eye on the fact that it was only 2.5 hours from home on a major interstate. Whereas IU just seemed unnecessarily far. Obviously, we didn't do a lot of research into our college choices. They're pretty different schools. But we chose Purdue because it was kind of close to home. And then my parents left us. In the meantime, all of our neighbors, though, were like, no, always feel like this is your home. Always come home. Always come visit. Stay at our houses. Come, whatever. So that was awesome. We had all these neighbors who we were close to, who opened their homes to us, and we took advantage of that, particularly our first 2 years of school. And we would come up for whatever. I mean, you were baking a pie. We could get a ride back to Michigan City for a pie. I mean, whatever, We'd do some laundry. And one time I came up, and it was sort of the late fall, so it is much, much colder than it is here, but it was a beautiful time on Lake Michigan. And I made a plan to stay at my neighbor Ginny's house. She's kind of like the grandma I never had, which is to say she was awesome, and she never got angry, and she always baked pies. She made cheesy potato casserole. She served all of her meals on Fiesta ware. And when I needed to go to prom at 16 and my chest hadn't come in yet, amazing, she loaned me her chicken cutlets, which is pretty cool considering she was 75, and she was like, I have just what you need. I was like, you do? That's amazing. But I was also pretty respectful of Ginny's space. So I made plans with my friend Jim. Now, Jim was a friend in the sense that, when I was 16, I dated Jim. But now that I was 18, I was no longer dating Jim. And, we'd not really gone our separate ways. We just sort of were friends in that way that you're friends with boys you have undying crushes on. And Jim came up. And I want to tell you a little bit about Jim. I met Jim at a coffee shop because one night when I was 16 years old, I saw him and I paper, scissors, rocked with another girl to which one of us was going to get to talk to him first because he was so cute. And then, of course, like you're 16, so like the end of the night comes and you have to have an 11 o'clock curfew, which is true. And like you didn't get around to ever talking to him. And I was like, I'm going to go talk to him. And I went up to him and I like squatted next to him. This was a coffee shop where all the bands that wanted to be like the Smashing Pumpkins at the time were performing and playing. So it was a little loud because there was live music going on. And I said, I swear to God, you are the best looking man I have ever seen in my entire life. And he said, I can't hear you. And I had a choice to make, and I made that choice. And I said, you are the best looking man I have ever seen in my life. And he stood up and he was like, hi, my name is Jim. And I was like, hi. Turns out he was a twin. I'm a twin. It was amazing. We totally dated. So that is just setting the stage. So Jim, who's beautiful, like so beautiful, comes up and he visits me, and it's all fun and games. And I'm thinking, maybe this could be one of those visits where we make out and we don't just like chat the whole time. But I was like, I can't make out with him at Ginny's house because that seems somehow disrespectful. She's like my grandma, and I don't have access to my old house. And Lake Michigan is sort of like a makeout spot, shockingly, I'm sure to you guys, but it was way too cold. Like it was late October. It was like, no way was that going to happen. And I thought, oh, I could totally take him up to the treehouse. And maybe it'd be like kitschy, like maybe it'd be funny. It was a risk, but I felt